The bioluminescent corridors of the Velthry Medical Complex pulsed with an eerie blue light, each flash synchronized with the failing neural patterns of their most precious patient. Princess Kestra lay motionless in the center of the quantum healing chamber, her silver blue skin dulled to an almost gray pallor. The intricate tattoos that marked her royal lineage, normally glowing with soft ethereal light, had faded to mere shadows beneath her translucent flesh. High Healer Omnix stood over her still form, his six-fingered hands hovering above complex holographic displays that showed nothing but cascading failure. The neural pathways that should have been bright rivers of consciousness had become dark, twisted mazes leading nowhere. His elongated skull, marked with the ceremonial scarification of his position, bore deep lines of exhaustion and defeat. The psychic plague has created barriers we cannot breach, Omnix reported to King Valdris, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones of his species. Our most advanced neural synthesizers, our quantum consciousness amplifiers, nothing can penetrate the walls this disease has built around her mind. King Valdris, his massive frame dwarfing even the tall healing chamber, pressed his palms against the transparent barrier that separated him from his daughter. His skin, normally a vibrant azure that spoke of royal blood, had taken on the worried pallor of a father watching his child slip away. The crown upon his head, a living crystal that responded to his emotions, flickered with unstable patterns of grief and desperation. "Tell me there is something more we can do," he whispered, his voice breaking with emotion. "She is my heir, my heart, my hope for our people's future." Omnix's secondary arms gestured helplessly at the arrays of equipment surrounding them. "We have tried everything within the bounds of Velthry science. The molecular reconstructors, the consciousness transfers, the temporal healing matrices all have failed. The plague adapts faster than we can counter it." In the corner of the chamber, a younger healer named Quinn worked frantically at a control panel, his movements sharp with barely contained panic. He had been Kestra's personal physician since childhood, and the weight of his failure pressed down on him like a physical force. "The neural degradation is accelerating," he announced, his voice tight with professional control masking personal anguish. "At this rate, we have perhaps days before the damage becomes irreversible." The king's crystal crown flared with a burst of angry red light. "Days? You speak of days when my daughter has been fighting for her life for weeks. Where is the advancement we boast of? Where is the superiority of Velthry medicine?" Before Omnix could respond, the chamber doors dilated with a soft whisper of displaced air. A figure entered, tall, lean, with skin that seemed to shift between deep purple and midnight blue depending on the angle of the light. This was Jorik, though he bore little resemblance to the humans most Velthry had encountered in their limited dealings with the younger species. Jorik moved with a fluid grace that spoke of years spent working in low-gravity environments, his movements economical and precise. His clothing was simple compared to the elaborate robes of the Velthry healers, a practical jumpsuit marked with the insignia of the Frontier Medical Corps. Most striking were his eyes, a deep amber that seemed to hold depths of knowledge and experience that belied his relatively young age by human standards. "I came as quickly as I could," Jorik said, his voice carrying the slight accent of someone who had spent years adapting to alien languages. The message said it was urgent. High Healer Omnix turned toward the newcomer, his expression shifting from desperate hope to barely concealed disdain. "You are the human medic? You appear younger than expected. Age isn't everything in medicine." Jorik replied calmly, approaching the healing chamber with confident steps. "Experience matters more, and I've had plenty of that." He paused beside the princess, his amber eyes studying her still form with an intensity that made the Velthry healers uncomfortable. "What exactly are we dealing with? A psychic plague?" Omnix explained, his tone suggesting he doubted the human could comprehend such complexity. "It creates neural barriers that prevent consciousness from maintaining coherent patterns. Our most advanced techniques cannot penetrate these barriers." Jorik nodded slowly, his gaze never leaving Kestra's face, even in her unconscious state. She was beautiful in the way that all Velthry possessed an otherworldly grace that seemed to make the air itself shimmer round her. Her dark hair, shot through with strands of silver that marked her royal heritage, spread across the biosupportive pillow like spilled starlight. Your techniques, Jorik said quietly, they focus on the barriers themselves, don't they? Trying to break through or dissolve them. Naturally, Omnix replied, his secondary arms spreading in a gesture of obvious superiority. We attack the problem directly with focused energy and quantum manipulation. And if that's exactly what the plague wants you to do, Jorik asked, his amber eyes finally lifting to meet the high healer's gaze. What if the barriers aren't meant to be broken, but bypassed? The healing chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems and the gentle pulse of bioluminescent displays. King Valdris stepped forward, his massive presence commanding attention. You speak of bypassing what our finest healers cannot breach, he said, his voice carrying both skepticism and desperate hope. How would such a thing be possible? Jorik approached the control panel, his movements careful and respectful as he studied the readouts. In human medicine, we've learned that consciousness isn't just electrical patterns and neural pathways. It's memory, emotion, connection, things that can't be measured by your most advanced scanners. Primitive thinking, Omnix muttered, but his tone lacked its earlier conviction. Maybe. Jorik acknowledged, his attention returning to Kestra. But primitive thinking sometimes finds paths that advanced logic misses. He turned to the king, his expression serious, but not without compassion. Your Majesty, I need your permission to try something that will seem completely contrary to everything your healers believe. I need to disconnect most of this equipment and work with methods that may appear crude by your standards. The king's crown flickered through a spectrum of colors as he wrestled with the decision. Around them, the medical staff exchanged glances of horror and fascination. To disconnect the quantum consciousness amplifiers would be to abandon everything they understood about healing. If you harm her, King Valdris said finally, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority, there will be no sanctuary in this galaxy that can protect you from my wrath. I understand, Jorik replied, his amber eyes holding the king's gaze steadily. But if I don't try, she's going to die anyway, and I've never been good at accepting the impossible. As if in response to his words, one of the monitors showed a slight fluctuation in Kestra's neural patterns, the first change anyone had seen in days. It was subtle, barely detectable, but it was there. 1 week, the king declared, his decision made. You have 1 week to prove that human medicine can accomplish what ours cannot. Jorik nodded, already moving toward the healing chamber with purpose. That's all I'll need, he said, though privately he wondered if even that would be enough. The princess looked so fragile, so far from the vibrant woman he had heard described in the urgent messages that had brought him across half the galaxy. But as he began disconnecting the first of the quantum amplifiers, ignoring the horrified gasps of the Velthri medical staff, Jorik felt something he had learned to trust over years of impossible cases, the quiet certainty that told him this was a battle he could win. The real question was whether he would be able to walk away from the woman he was about to save. The medical bay erupted in chaos as Jorik began systematically disconnecting the crystalline neural interfaces. From Princess Kestra's temples, High Healer Omnix lunged forward, his 6-fingered hands trembling with indignation, while his secondary arms gestured frantically at the diminishing readouts. You're destroying everything. Omnix's voice rose to a harmonic shriek that made the chamber's bioluminescent walls flicker in response. Those quantum stabilizers are the only thing maintaining her neural integrity, Jorik continued, his work. With steady hands, his amber eyes focused on the princess's peaceful face. They're creating interference, he replied calmly, disconnecting another cable with practiced precision. How do you expect her consciousness to find its way back through all this electronic noise? The words hung in the air like a challenge to everything the Velthri healers had been taught. Young Quinn stepped forward, his skin flushing deeper purple with anxiety. The neural degradation will accelerate without the stabilizers. We'll lose her within hours. We've already lost her, Jorik said, his voice carrying a gentleness that seemed to calm the frantic energy in the room. She's not in the machines, she's trapped somewhere deeper, somewhere your technology can't reach. From his worn leather satchel, Jorik withdrew what looked like an ancient relic, by galactic standards a simple stethoscope. its metal surface polished smooth by countless uses. The Velthri medical staff stared in horror as he placed the primitive instrument against Kestra's chest, just above her heart. Her cardiovascular rhythm is erratic, Jorok observed, his brow furrowing in concentration, not from the plague, but from your treatments. You're overwhelming her system with quantum interference. High Healer Omnix's scarified skull flushed with indignation. This is barbarism. Guards, remove this primitive. No. King Valdris's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. The massive ruler stepped forward, his crystal crown pulsing with decisive blue light. I gave him 1 week. Let him work. The healing chamber fell into tense silence, broken only by the soft sounds of Jorok's continued disconnection of the alien medical equipment. With each cable removed, the harsh electronic hum that had filled the room began to fade, replaced by something quieter, more organic. There, Jorok said, stepping back from the now simplified setup. Now we can actually hear what her body is trying to tell us. What he did next shocked the assembled Velthri to their core. Jorok began what appeared to be nothing more than massage, his human hands working along Kestra's temples and neck, following pathways that no scanner had ever mapped. His touch was gentle but confident, and somehow the princess's breathing seemed to deepen under his ministrations. In human medicine, Jorok explained as he worked, we understand that consciousness isn't just electrical impulses. It's memory, emotion, connection, things that exist in the spaces between neurons, not in the neurons themselves. Royal attendant Nira, who had been silently observing from the corner, stepped forward with trembling hands. She was young for a Velthri, her skin still holding the lighter blue tones of youth, and her devotion to the princess was written in every line of her face. May I tell you about her? Nira asked hesitantly, if personal memories might help. I've served Princess Kestra since we were both children. Jorok looked up from his work, his amber eyes brightening with interest. Tell me everything. Nira's voice grew stronger as she spoke. She loves the sound of the crystal chimes at dawn. She hums ancient melodies when she thinks no one is listening. She's afraid of the deep caves beneath the palace, but she'd never admit it to anyone. The attendant paused, her skin flushing deeper with emotion, and she dreams of seeing other worlds, meeting other species. She's not like most royal offspring. She believes in unity, not dominance. As Nira spoke, Jorok absorbed every detail, his hands never stopping their gentle work along Kestra's neural pathways. He began incorporating her words into his treatment, speaking to the unconscious princess in low, soothing tones. Can you hear the chimes, Kestra? He asked softly. They're calling you back to the morning light. Your people need you, but more than that, you have so much left to explore. The Velthri medical staff watched in fascination as Jorok continued his unorthodox treatment. He brought aromatic crystals from the palace gardens, letting their scent fill the sterile air. He played soft harmonic patterns on a simple human device, watching Kestra's brainwave patterns on the few monitors he had left active. What are you doing? King Valdris asked during one of his frequent visits, his massive frame casting shadows across the healing chamber. Building bridges, Jorok replied, gently stroking Kestra's silver-streaked hair. The psychic plague created barriers. In her mind, your technology can't cross them because it approaches consciousness like a machine. But memory, emotion, sensory experience, these can slip through cracks that logic cannot navigate. High Healer Omnix studied the simplified readouts with growing amazement. It's impossible, he muttered, his secondary arms tracing complex patterns. In the air, her neural activity is increasing, but there's no technological intervention. That's because consciousness isn't technology, Jorok said, his voice carrying a conviction that seemed to resonate in the very air around them. It's something far more complex and beautiful than any machine could ever replicate. As the hours passed, Jorok established a routine that both horrified and fascinated the Velthri staff. He talked to Kestra constantly, not clinical observations, but personal stories from his travels across the galaxy. He told her about worlds where twin suns painted the sky in impossible colors, about nebulae that sang with cosmic harmonies, about the countless species he had encountered in his years as a frontier medic. You know what I think, Princess, he said during one of their one-sided conversations. his hand resting gently on her arm. "I think you'd love the crystal caves of Andromeda 7. They're nothing like the deep caves you fear. They're filled with light, with music that comes from the stones themselves. And the people there, they're artists and dreamers, just like you." Young Quinn, who had been monitoring the princess's vital signs with growing excitement, suddenly called out, "There, did you see that?" Her fingers moved. The movement was subtle, barely perceptible, but everyone in the chamber had seen it. Kestra's right hand, which had been lying motionless for days, had twitched slightly at the sound of Jorek's voice. "Princess," Jorek said, his voice thick with emotion as he took her hand in his. "I know you can hear me, if you can understand what I'm saying. Squeeze my hand." The response was immediate and unmistakable. Kestra's fingers tightened around his with deliberate strength, her breathing deepening as her body began to respond to his touch. "Impossible," High Healer Omnix whispered, his earlier hostility replaced by wonder. "Her neural pathways are reconstructing themselves, but there's no quantum catalyst, no technological intervention. Connection," Jorek said simply, his amber eyes never leaving Kestra's face. "The thing your machines can't measure, but consciousness can't exist without." As night fell over the palace, the bioluminescent walls dimming to their rest cycle, Jorek maintained his vigil beside the princess. He found himself talking to her differently now, the clinical distance he had maintained beginning to dissolve. "I've spent years traveling from world to world," he admitted quietly, his voice barely above a whisper, "always moving, always looking for the next challenge, the next impossible case to solve. But sitting here with you, I'm starting to understand something I never realized before." Kestra's breathing had grown steadier throughout the night, and her grip on his hand had become almost possessive. Her skin, which had been cold and gray when he arrived, now held a faint warmth that spoke of returning life. "I think I've been running from something," Jorek continued, his free hand gently brushing a strand of silver hair from her face, "not toward adventure, but away from the possibility of caring too much about someone I might not be able to save." In response to his words, Kestra's eyes moved beneath her closed lids, and her lips parted slightly as if she were trying to speak. The movement was brief, but it was enough to make Jorek's heart race with hope. "That's it," he whispered, leaning closer. "Come back to us, princess. Come back to me." Outside the healing chamber, the twin moons of Velthry cast their silver light across the palace grounds, illuminating a future that was beginning to look less impossible with each passing hour. The seventh dawn since Jorek's rival painted the healing chamber in soft crystalline light that filtered through the palace's organic walls. The human medic had barely slept, his vigil maintained through the night cycles as he continued his gentle ministrations. Princess Kestra's condition had been steadily improving, her vital signs stronger and more stable than they had been since the plague first struck. Jorek sat beside her by her bed, his amber eyes showing the strain of constant watchfulness, yet brightened by hope that grew stronger with each small sign of progress. Her hand remained clasped in his, and throughout the night he had felt the gradual strengthening of her grip, as if she were using his touch as an anchor to pull herself back. From the depths of unconsciousness, Jorek, the word was barely a whisper, so soft it might have been mistaken for the hum of the remaining life support systems. But Jorek heard it clearly, his name spoken in a voice that carried the musical undertones of the Velthry language, yet somehow shaped specifically for him. His eyes snapped, fully alert to find Kestra's silver gaze focused on his face. She was truly awake for the first time in weeks, her pupils dilating and contracting as they adjusted to the chamber's gentle lighting. Despite her weakness, there was an unmistakable intelligence in those eyes, an awareness that made Jorek's heart leap with joy and relief. "Princess," he breathed, his voice thick with emotion he hadn't expected to feel. "You're back. You're really back." Kestra's lips curved in the faintest suggestion of a smile. "I never left," she whispered, her voice gaining strength with each word. "I heard everything, every story about crystal caves and singing nebulae. Every word you spoke to bring me home." Her silver eyes studied his face with an intensity that made the air between them seem to shimmer. There was something there, a connection that had formed during the long hours of his vigil, deeper than the relationship between healer and patient. "Father," she said softly, and King Valdris, who had been dozing in his chair nearby, came instantly awake. The massive ruler rushed to her bedside, tears streaming down his azure face as his crystal crown blazed with brilliant patterns of joy. "Kestra, my daughter," he said, his voice breaking with emotion. "We thought we had lost you forever. I could feel your presence too, Father," she replied, her free hand reaching toward him while the other remained firmly clasped in Jorik's. But it was his voice that showed me the way back, his stories that gave me something to reach toward. Royal attendant Nira, who had been sleeping on a cushion in the corner, awakened at the sound of voices and gasped when she saw her mistress conscious and alert. "Princess O, blessed stars, you're awake, dear Nira," Kestra said warmly, her voice continuing to strengthen. "Thank you for sharing your memories with him. They helped more than you can know." High Healer Omnix entered the chamber for his morning examination and stopped short. When he saw the scene before him, the princess, who had been barely clinging to life for weeks, was not only conscious, but engaging in coherent conversation. The readings on his instruments showed neural activity patterns that defied everything he thought. He knew about consciousness and healing. "This is unprecedented," Omnix murmured, his six-fingered hands trembling as he studied the data. "The barriers created by the psychic plague have dissolved completely. Her neural pathways have not only healed, but appear stronger than before the infection." "Love," Jorik said simply, his amber eyes never leaving Kestra's face. "Connection. The things your instruments can't measure, but consciousness can't exist without." Over the following days, as Kestra regained her strength, she and Jorik spent countless hours together. What had begun as medical necessity evolved into something neither had anticipated. They walked through the palace's crystal gardens, her arm linked through his as she showed him the chimes that sang at dawn and the bioluminescent flowers that responded to touch. "I dreamed of your stories," she told him one evening as they sat beside a fountain whose waters danced with imprisoned starlight. "The worlds you described, the nebulae that sing, I could see them all through your memories. And I dreamed of you," Jorik admitted, his hand finding hers as naturally as breathing. "Even before you woke up, I knew something was happening that I'd never experienced before." Their first kiss occurred under the light of Valthari's twin moons, soft and tentative. At first, then deeper as they discovered the electric connection that flowed between them. Her lips were warm against his, and he could taste the exotic sweetness of her alien nature, a flavor like crystallized starlight that made his human senses reel with pleasure. When they separated, both were breathing hard, their hearts racing in synchronization despite their different physiologies. "This is madness," Kestra whispered, but her arms remained around his neck, her silver eyes bright with desire and affection. "The best kind," Jorik replied, pulling her closer until their foreheads touched. "I've spent my whole career saving lives, but I've never felt like this about anyone. You're not just a patient to me, Kestra, you're becoming everything." Their relationship faced immediate challenges from the court. Valthari nobles whispered about the impropriety of a princess consorting with an alien, especially one from a species they considered primitive, but King Valdris, who had witnessed the miracle of his daughter's recovery, found himself reconsidering assumptions he had held for centuries. "You love him," the king said to Kestra during a private conversation in his crystalline throne room. "With all my heart," she replied without hesitation. "He saved my life, Father, but more than that. He saw me as more than just a princess or a patient. He saw me as a person worth fighting for, worth reaching across the darkness to find." "And you?" the king asked, turning his attention to Jorik, who stood respectfully beside the throne. "What do you see when you look at my daughter?" Jorik met the king's gaze steadily, his amber eyes reflecting the throne room's prismatic light. "I see the woman I want to spend the rest of my life protecting, exploring the galaxy with, learning from. I see someone who makes me want to be better than I ever thought possible." King Valdris studied them both for a long moment, his crown cycling through thoughtful patterns of blue and silver. "The court will oppose this union," he said finally. "There will be those who question the wisdom of binding our royal line to an alien bloodline. Let them question," Kestra said firmly, her hand slipping into Jorik's. "What we have is real, Father. It's the kind of connection that transcends species, that proves love recognizes no boundaries. That night, in the privacy of Kestra's chambers, they made love for the first time. Her skin was silk beneath his hands, electric with alien sensitivity, that sent sparks of pleasure through both their nervous systems. Every touch created cascading waves of sensation that their different biologies somehow harmonized into something beautiful and new. "I felt so lost in that darkness," she whispered afterward, her head resting on his chest as their hearts gradually slowed to a peaceful rhythm. "But your voice was like a beacon calling me home." "We called each other home," Jorah corrected, stroking her silver-streaked hair. "I've been wandering the galaxy for years, but I never found where I belonged until I found you." Outside their window, the twin moons cast silver light across the palace grounds, illuminating a love that had grown from the most unlikely circumstances. In the medical bay, young Velthri healers practiced the gentle touch techniques they had learned from watching the human work. In the diplomatic quarters, ambassadors began drafting new treaties based on cooperation rather than conquest. And in the royal chambers, to hearts beat as one, proving that sometimes the greatest medical miracle of all is love that refuses to follow any rules but its own. 3 months had passed since Princess Kestra's miraculous recovery, and the Velthri royal court buzzed with activity that bordered on scandal. The announcement had sent shockwaves through the nobility. The princess would formalize her bond with the human medic who had saved her life, Lord Vex, a prominent court official whose family had served the crown for generations, paced the crystalline halls with barely contained fury, his deep purple skin flushed darker with indignation as he spoke to anyone who would listen. "It's an abomination," he muttered to a gathering of conservative nobles. "A princess of the royal bloodline bonding with a primitive alien. What will this do to our standing in the galactic community?" That primitive alien accomplished what all our advanced medicine could not. Admiral Thane replied firmly from across the ornate chamber. Her scarred hands, marked by years of military service, gestured emphatically as she spoke. "Perhaps it's time we reconsidered our assumptions about superiority." The court was divided, but the division ran deeper than simple prejudice. The success of Jorah's unconventional methods had forced the entire Velthri medical establishment to question centuries of accepted wisdom. Young healers like Quinn had begun incorporating emotional therapy and gentle touch techniques into their practices, with remarkable results that couldn't be ignored. "The human has revolutionized our understanding of consciousness itself." High Healer Onyx admitted privately to King Valdris during one of their regular meetings. His earlier hostility had been replaced by grudging respect and scientific fascination. "We've begun trials with his methods across 12 different medical facilities. The success rates are extraordinary." King Valdris nodded thoughtfully. His massive frame settled on the living crystal throne that responded to his emotions with shifting patterns of light. "Different doesn't mean inferior," he mused. "Perhaps that's what true cooperation between species means, not one being better than another, but each contributing what the other lacks." Meanwhile, Jorah faced his own challenges within the palace. Lord Vex had made it his personal mission to make the human feel unwelcome, cornering him whenever possible with passive-aggressive comments and thinly veiled threats. "You realize this relationship is impossible," Vex said coldly during one such encounter in the medical bay. "You're different species. The biological incompatibilities alone make any long-term union impractical." "Love doesn't recognize species barriers," Jorah replied calmly, never pausing in his work organizing medical supplies. "And besides," he added with a slight smile, "I've made a career out of proving that impossible things are simply challenges waiting for the right approach." "This isn't a medical case," Vex pressed, his tone growing sharper. "This is politics, diplomacy, the future of our royal line. You cannot possibly understand the complexities involved." Jorah finally turned to face the court official, his amber eyes steady and unintimidated. "I understand that I love her, and she loves me. I understand that together we've already accomplished something your entire medical establishment thought impossible. If we can heal a mind that was lost to psychic plague, I think we can handle whatever political complications you're worried about." That evening, in the privacy of Kestra's chambers overlooking the crystal gardens. She and Jorek discussed the growing tension within the court. The princess had changed since her recovery. She seemed more vibrant, more alive, as if her experience with the plague had burned away whatever doubts she might have had about her own strength and desires. "Vex approached me today," she said, settling beside Jorek on the cushioned platform that served as seating in Velthri architecture. "He offered me a list of suitable matches from other royal houses, all Velthri, all properly connected, all completely wrong for me." Jorek's jaw tightened slightly. "And what did you tell him?" "That I'd rather spend my life with someone who sees my heart than someone who only sees my bloodline," she replied, her silver eyes sparkling with defiance. "That I'd rather be happy with an alien than miserable with a noble." They made love that night with a passion intensified by the opposition they faced. Their bodies moved together in perfect harmony. Despite their different physiologies, their skin seeming to glow where they touched. Kestra's alien sensitivity sent cascading waves of pleasure through them both, while Jorek's human intensity grounded her in sensations that were both foreign and perfectly right. "I never understood what the ancient poets meant when they wrote about souls calling to each other across the void," Kestra whispered afterward, her head resting on his chest. "Now I know they were writing about this about us. Your father wants to meet with us tomorrow," Jorek said, his fingers tracing gentle patterns along her arm. "He said it was time to make some formal decisions about our future." Kestra lifted her head to look at him, her expression mixing excitement with concern. "Are you ready for that? Once we make this official, there's no going back. You'll be bound not just to me, but to Velthri politics, to a life you never chose." Jorek cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs stroking the soft skin of her cheeks. "I chose you," he said simply. "Everything else is just details we'll figure out together." The next morning brought an unexpected complication. A delegation from the Velthri Medical Council arrived at the palace, requesting an audience with both Jorek and the king. They were led by Healer Supreme Tylix, an ancient Velthri whose age was measured in centuries and whose authority in medical matters was absolute. "We have observed the humans' methods with great interest," Tylix announced, her voice carrying the weight of eons. "His success with the princess has opened new avenues of research that could benefit our entire civilization. However, we must insist on formal documentation of his techniques before any personal arrangements are finalized." The implication was clear. They wanted to extract Jorek's knowledge before he became too entangled in royal politics to be objective. King Valdris's crown flickered with irritation at the barely veiled threat. "The human is not a specimen to be studied," the king declared. "He is a healer who saved my daughter's life and has earned the right to be treated with respect." "Of course, Your Majesty," Tylix replied smoothly. "We simply wish to ensure that his valuable knowledge is preserved for the benefit of all Velthri. Surely he would want his innovations to help as many patients as possible." Jorek stepped forward, his expression thoughtful. "I'd be happy to share everything I know with your medical council," he said, surprising everyone in the room, "but not as a condition of my relationship with the princess. I'll do it because it's the right thing to do, because healing should transcend politics and species barriers." His words created a moment of stunned silence. Here was the alien they had tried to use as a bargaining chip, freely offering what they had attempted to demand. "You would do this?" Tylix asked, her ancient eyes studying him with new interest. "Share knowledge that could revolutionize our medical practices without requiring anything in return. That's what healers do," Jorek replied simply. "We share knowledge to save lives. My relationship with Princess Kestra isn't a business transaction, it's love. And love isn't something you can negotiate or bargain for." Princess Kestra moved to stand beside him, her hands slipping into his as she faced the assembled dignitaries. "This is why I love him," she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "Not because he's exotic or different, but because he has the kind of integrity that makes him worth loving. He's teaching us that true strength comes from connection, not dominance." King Valdris rose from his throne, his massive presence commanding attention as his crown blazed with decisive patterns of light. "I hereby grant Jorek full citizenship in the Velthri Empire and the title of Royal Physician," he declared, Furthermore, I give my blessing to his union with my daughter. Anyone who opposes this decision opposes the crown itself." The announcement rippled through the court like a shockwave. Lord Vex's face went through several shades of purple before settling on a resigned gray, while Admiral Thane smiled broadly and began what would become thunderous applause. As the ceremony concluded and the various delegations dispersed, Jorek and Kestra found themselves alone in the throne room's crystalline vastness. The weight of what had just occurred, the official recognition of their relationship, the political implications, the changes it would bring seemed to settle around them like a new reality. "No regrets?" Kestra asked softly, her silver eyes searching his face. "Only one," Jorek replied, pulling her into his arms. "That it took a psychic plague and a medical crisis for us to find each other. I wish we'd had more time before all the politics got involved. We have all the time in the galaxy now," she reminded him, rising on her toes to kiss him softly. "And I intend to make every moment of it count." Outside the throne room, the twin moons were beginning their rise over the palace, casting silver light that seemed to bless the love that had grown from the most impossible circumstances into something that would change both their worlds forever. 6 months after the royal announcement, the Valkyrie Palace had transformed into a symphony of diplomatic activity. Representatives from dozens of species filled the crystalline halls, their varied forms creating a kaleidoscope of colors and shapes that would have been unimaginable just a year before. The wedding of Princess Kestra and Jorek had become more than a royal ceremony. It had evolved into a symbol of interspecies cooperation that resonated across the galaxy. Jorek stood in his preparation chamber, adjusting the ceremonial robes that had been crafted specifically for the occasion. The garments blended Valkyrie tradition with human aesthetics, flowing crystal-threaded fabric that shimmered with embedded bioluminescent patterns, yet cut in a style that accommodated his human form. The weight of what was about to occur pressed down on him, not with anxiety, but with profound anticipation. "Nervous?" asked Admiral Thane, who had become an unexpected ally and friend during the months of preparation. Her scarred hands worked to adjust the ceremonial insignia on his collar with surprising gentleness. "Excited?" Jorek corrected, his amber eyes bright with emotion. "I've performed medical procedures in zero gravity during cosmic storms, but I've never done anything that felt as important as what's about to happen." Meanwhile, in the royal preparation chambers, Princess Kestra stood before mirrors that seemed to be made of captured starlight. Her wedding gown was a masterpiece of Valkyrie craftsmanship, flowing fabric that shifted between silver and deep blue, adorned with living crystals that responded to her emotions with gentle pulses of light. Woven throughout the alien materials were earth flowers that Jorek had specially requested, roses and jasmine that filled the air with their exotic fragrance. Royal attendant Nira worked carefully to arrange the traditional wedding crown upon Kestra's head, a delicate creation of living crystal and precious metals that would bond with her neural patterns and glow with her life force throughout the ceremony. "I never thought I'd see this day," Nira said softly, her own eyes bright with tears of joy. "When you were lost to the plague, I feared we would lose the most compassionate member of the royal family forever. You didn't lose me," Kestra replied, her reflection showing a woman transformed by love and purpose. "Jorek found me, and in finding me, he helped me find a strength I never knew I possessed." King Valdris entered the chamber, his massive frame draped in the ceremonial robes of state. His crystal crown blazed with patterns of pride and joy that illuminated the entire room. "My daughter," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you look radiant." "I feel radiant, Father," she replied, turning to embrace him. "Thank you for supporting us, for seeing past the prejudices that could have destroyed this happiness. I learned something from you're human," the king admitted, "that wisdom doesn't belong to any single species, and that love transcends boundaries we thought were absolute. Today isn't just your wedding, it's the beginning of a new chapter for our entire civilization." The ceremony itself took place in the grand crystalline amphitheater, a massive space whose walls were grown rather than built, their organic curves designed to amplify both sound and emotion. Thousands of beings filled the tiered seating, Valkyrie nobles in their shimmering robes, human diplomats in their formal attire, and representatives from species as varied as the crystal-singing harmonians and the telepathic mind-weavers. As Jorok walked down the central aisle, he felt the weight of history settling around him. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a statement that love could bridge any gap, heal any division, overcome any obstacle. The assembled crowd fell silent as he took his place at the altar, a platform of living crystal that pulsed with the combined life forces of everyone present. Then Kestra appeared, and the entire amphitheater seemed to hold its breath. She moved with ethereal grace down the aisle, her gown trailing light like captured starfire, her crown blazing with patterns of pure joy. When their eyes met across the sacred space, the connection between them was so powerful that the crystal walls themselves began to resonate in harmony. They exchanged vows in both languages, their words creating a bridge between worlds that would never again be quite as separate as they once were. By the light of our twin moons and the warmth of your distant sun, Kestra said, her voice carrying clearly throughout the vast space, I bind my life to yours, Jorok of Earth. In you I have found not just love, but a partner who sees the universe as it could be united, peaceful, whole. Under the stars that connect all worlds, Jorok replied, his human accent making the Velthri words sound like poetry. I pledge my heart to yours, Princess Kestra of the Velthri Empire. You taught me that healing isn't just about medicine, it's about connection, understanding, love that refuses to recognize boundaries. When they kissed, sealing their union, the assembled crowd erupted in cheers that seemed to shake the very foundations of the palace. The crystal walls amplified the sound until it became a symphony of celebration that could be heard across the entire capital city. The wedding feast lasted 3 days, with music and dancing that blended traditions from across the galaxy. Jorok found himself at the center of conversations about medical techniques, his unconventional methods now the subject of intense academic interest and practical application. You've revolutionized our entire approach to consciousness studies, High Healer Onyx admitted during one such discussion, his earlier hostility completely forgotten. We've established exchange programs with human medical facilities. The collaboration has produced breakthroughs we never imagined possible. Different perspectives, Jorok replied graciously. When we stop assuming our way is the only way, amazing things become possible. Even Lord Vex, who had opposed the union so vehemently, approached them during the celebration, his purple skin flushed with what might have been embarrassment as he bowed formally to the couple. I owe you both an apology, he said stiffly. I let prejudice cloud my judgment. Your union has already brought benefits to our people that I was too narrow-minded to foresee. Prejudice is just fear wearing a fancy costume, Kestra replied gently. We're all learning to see past our fears together. On their wedding night, alone in chambers that overlooked the crystal gardens where they had first walked together, Jorok and Kestra reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't gotten sick? Kestra asked, her head resting on his shoulder as they watched the twin moons rise over the palace grounds. Never, Jorok replied without hesitation. I think we would have found each other somehow. Love this strong doesn't happen by accident, it's destiny disguising itself as chance. They made love with the passion of newlyweds and the deep connection of souls who had found each other across impossible distances. Their different biologies had learned to harmonize perfectly, creating sensations and emotions that neither species had ever experienced alone. In the afterglow, Kestra traced patterns on his chest with her finger, her touch leaving faint trails of bioluminescent energy. The diplomatic corps wants us to visit other worlds, she said, to show that cooperation between species isn't just possible, it's beautiful. What do you think? Jorok asked, though he could already see the excitement building in her silver eyes. I think, she said, rising to look into his face, that we've already proven the most important thing, that love recognizes no boundaries, not species, not distance, not even the laws of medicine and physics. Jorok smiled, pulling her down for another kiss. Then let's show the galaxy what we've learned. Outside their window, the twin moons cast silver light across the palace grounds, illuminating a future where the impossible had become inevitable. In the medical bay, Young healers from a dozen different species worked side by side, learning techniques that blended technology with compassion. In the diplomatic quarters, ambassadors drafted treaties based on cooperation rather than conquest. And in the royal chambers, two hearts beat as one, proving that sometimes the greatest healing of all comes not from medicine or machines, but from love that refuses to follow any rules except its own. Their story would be told across the galaxy for generations, not as a tale of human triumph or alien medicine, but as proof that when two souls find each other across the vast darkness of space, they can create light bright enough to illuminate entire civilizations. The princess who wasn't supposed to survive had not only lived, she had found a love that would transform the very meaning of what it meant to heal, to hope, and to bridge the infinite spaces between